It is 3 in the morning, and there is someone standing in your hallway. Their eyes are open. They are looking straight at you. And they are asleep. Everything you have ever been told about what to do next is wrong. You have probably heard that waking them could stop their heart, or shock them into a coma, or strand them somewhere between sleeping and waking. None of that is true. Not one word of it. But the instinct underneath it, the sense that something here is genuinely dangerous, is right. It is just pointing at completely the wrong thing. So there are 2 things to take apart tonight. The first is the warning itself, which is folklore, and which I can deal with fairly quickly. The second is much stranger, and it is the reason this video exists, because a sleepwalker is not asleep, and they are not awake either. They are both at the same time in different parts of the same head, and once you know which parts are which, sleepwalking stops being spooky and becomes frightening for a completely different reason. Let's start with the rule, because it is oddly specific. The claim is not simply that you should not wake a sleepwalker. It is that waking them does harm. Shock, heart failure, permanent confusion. In the older versions, madness. Some tellings say the soul goes wandering, and waking the body strands it outside. Others just say it damages the brain, which sounds medical and means nothing at all. It is one of those rules that arrives fully formed. Nobody ever tells you where it came from, and there is no medical origin to find because there isn't one. This is not good advice that decayed over time. It was never true in the first place. So, what does actually happen if you wake one? They wake up. Badly. A person hauled out of deep sleep is confused, slow, and disoriented, and can stay that way for several minutes. This is a normal, thoroughly documented state, and it happens to everybody dragged out of deep sleep, sleepwalker or not. They may not know where they are. They may not recognize you for a moment. They will almost certainly have no idea how they ended up standing in a hallway. That is unpleasant. It is not damage. Nobody's heart stops. Nobody gets stranded anywhere. There is one real caution, and it is not the one you were given. A person in that state can be frightened, and a frightened, disoriented person who cannot yet work out what the shape in front of them is may lash out at it. So the risk in waking a sleepwalker is not to the sleepwalker. It is, mildly, to you. And it is almost entirely avoidable by not grabbing them and not shouting. That is the myth handled. Now the part that matters. Here is what nearly everybody gets wrong about sleepwalking, and it is not the waking rule. People assume a sleepwalker is acting out a dream. It is the obvious explanation. They are asleep, they are moving, so they must be doing whatever they are dreaming. They are not. And the reason is one of the strangest facts about your own body. Dreaming happens mostly in a stage called REM sleep, and during REM sleep, you are paralyzed. Genuinely paralyzed. The brain actively cuts the signal to almost every muscle you have, so that whatever you are doing in the dream stays in the dream. You are not lying still because you are relaxed. You are lying still because you have been switched off at the neck. That is a safety system, and it runs every single night of your life. Sleepwalking does not happen in REM. It happens at the opposite end of the night's architecture, in the deepest and slowest stage of sleep, usually in the first hour or 2 after you go down. The part of the night with almost no dream content in it at all, so the sleepwalker is not acting anything out. There is no story, there is no plot, there is a body moving through a house with nothing narrating it, which raises the obvious question. If they are in the deepest sleep there is, how are they walking? Because sleep is not one switch. We talk about being asleep or awake as though the brain votes as a single block. It does not. Different regions can sit in different states at the same time, and in a sleepwalking episode, that split becomes extreme. The clearest look anyone has had at this came from imaging a sleepwalker in the middle of an episode. What it showed was a brain divided almost cleanly in 2. The regions that generate movement and emotion had switched on and were running close to waking levels, and the regions at the front, the ones responsible for judgment, planning, self-awareness, and laying down memory, had stayed exactly where they were. Still in deep sleep. Still off. Sit with that for a second, because it is the whole video. The part that walks is awake. The part that decides is asleep. That is why their eyes are open. They need them. They are navigating a real house and avoiding real furniture. It is why they can work door handles, climb stairs, and run through long, complicated sequences of actions. And it is why, in the morning, there is nothing at all. No memory, because the machinery that writes memories never came online. There is nobody in there. There is only the driving. And this is not some rare exotic condition. Roughly 1 in 3 people will sleepwalk at least once in their lives. A few % of adults have had an episode within the last year. It is far more common in children, most of whom simply grow out of it as the deep sleep stage matures. It also runs in families hard. If neither of your parents sleepwalked, your own childhood odds sit at roughly 1 in 5. If one of them did, it is closer to 1 in 2. If both did, it is around 6 in 10. Very few behaviors track a family tree that tightly. So this is not exotic at all. It is an ordinary brain doing an ordinary thing slightly wrong. Which brings us to what is actually dangerous here. It was never the waking. It was never the heart. It is those few centimeters at the front of the head that stayed asleep. Because everything that region does is the thing you would want most in that moment. Judgment, risk assessment. The ability to notice that something is wrong. The ability to stop. Take it offline and leave the motor system running, and you get a person who can walk but cannot evaluate. Who can open a door but cannot ask whether the door should be opened. Who is standing at the top of a staircase with no part of their brain assigned to the question of whether this is a good idea. That is where the injuries come from. Falls downstairs. Walking into furniture. Through glass. Out of a front door into the road in the middle of the night. People have gone out of windows, having managed the whole sequence of opening them, with the part of the brain that would object to going out of a window still fast asleep. The overwhelming majority of sleepwalking harm is a sleepwalker hurting themselves in their own home, doing something they would never do awake. In a very small number of cases, it has gone considerably further than that. The most documented example happened in Canada in 1987. A man got up in the night, left his house, drove more than 20 kilometers across a city, went into his parents-in-law's home and attacked them. His mother-in-law died. He then drove himself to a police station and told the officers there that he thought he had killed some people, apparently without understanding what he was saying. He was examined at length. He had a strong family history of sleep disorders, and the sleep studies supported his account. He was tried for murder. He was acquitted, and the acquittal was later upheld by Canada's highest court, on the grounds that there had been nobody home to form an intent. I want to be careful with that story, because it is very easy to take the wrong thing from it. Cases like it are extraordinarily rare. A handful in the entire medical and legal literature, set against hundreds of millions of perfectly ordinary sleepwalkers whose worst night ends with them standing confused in a corridor. If you sleepwalk, or you live with somebody who does, that is not what is going to happen to you. It is in this video for exactly one reason. It is the clearest evidence anybody has that the front of the brain is genuinely offline during an episode. Not slowed, not impaired, absent. So what pushes an ordinary brain into that state? Mostly, pressure on deep sleep itself. Sleep deprivation is the big one. Go short for long enough, and the deep stage comes back heavier and more disorganized, and episodes become more likely. Fever does it, particularly in children. So does anything that keeps fragmenting the night, including breathing problems during sleep. Several medications are documented to trigger it. Stress gets reported constantly, though that evidence is a good deal softer than people tend to make it sound. Which means the honest version is this. Sleepwalking is a sleep problem before it is anything else. The behavior is downstream of the sleep. And the practical version is short. And it is close to the opposite of what you were told. You can wake them, it is allowed, it is not going to hurt them. But you usually do not need to, and there is a better move available. Speak calmly, from a little distance, and steer them back towards the bed. most of the time they will go. Do not grab, do not shout, do not try to startle them awake. Not because of any danger to them, but because a frightened person who cannot yet tell what you are is a person who might swing. And then deal with the actual hazard, which is the house. Lock the front door and put the key somewhere out of the way. Gate the stairs. Deal with the windows. Take the sharp and the breakable off the route between the bed and everywhere else. The person is not the problem. The staircase is the problem. You have now spent 12 minutes on something your brain does when nobody at all is driving, which raises a fairly uncomfortable question about the rest of the time, because that same region at the front, the one that went dark in the hallway, is the part you believe is making all of your decisions while you are awake. It is not doing nearly as much of that as you think. That is the next one. You were scared of the wrong thing. See you next time.